Hi everyone, today I'd like to do a quick flight and I'll show you all the great new features we've introduced in the ERJ Family 2.0. We'll talk about many of the new features like the ambient lighting modifier, our true noise cancelling, I'll show you how to fly an RNAV approach, and I'll also cover many of the other features like realistic strobe and beacon lights and all their configurations. I'll talk about the improved and updated EFB, and we'll mention the new fuel and auto brake systems. Plus, I'll give you a proper tour of the Lineage 1000. This $50 million ultra-large business jet, which we'll be flying today, is now the 5th member of the ERJ family. It was designed to meet the luxury and performance demands of billionaires, and you can see it used by the Roy family in the HBO hit Succession. It combines the best of all E-jets with exclusive features and an ultra-long range, making it the ultimate all-in-one airliner for your fleet. I'll also show you that you only really need to press a few buttons to complete a full flight with E-jets, which is a testament to Embraer's incredible engineering. The E-jets have been designed by Embraer to automate many of the tasks that you'd have to do manually in a Boeing or Airbus, making them one of the most popular airliners to fly. However, if you prefer a more hands-on approach, you can always just use the normal autopilot modes and fly just like a 737. So the E-jets are really a great option for any kind of pilot, and I can also share that as of April 2025, we are now working on a custom LNAV solution that will allow us to fly holds and other patterns. This will be added in one of our next updates. And don't forget that if you already own one E-jet, you can always upgrade and get all 4 remaining E-jets at a massive discount. Alright, so let's start our flight. First, let's get into the airplane. I'm gonna click on the door to open it, but I could also open it by using one of our pop-up panels. So if I go here and I look for the EFB, it's right there. And now we can also toggle the air stairs, which I could also do by just clicking on them. And now the air stairs are something that is unique to the Lineage, and I am super proud of them. And my favorite part is the little wiggle that we added as the air stairs fully unfold. You see that? Alright, let's walk up the stairs. And here we are in the galley. We have a quick look into the cabin. We can see that it's very different from the passenger version. All right, let's close the air stairs. Seriously, modeling these air stairs took hundreds of hours. I had to figure out exactly what the proportions will be so that it perfectly folds into the fuselage and then is stowed into the galley right here. All right, let's close the door. And now let's go into the cockpit. This is a familiar place for all E-jet pilots, as the cockpit includes all the signature E-jet features like automatic takeoff sequence. The authentic FMS will manage all auto throttle speeds, vertical and lateral guidance, including any altitude or speed restrictions. VNAV will calculate the exact top of descent, and it will start the descent automatically so that you don't have to try and guess when you need to start the descent in order to meet all of your altitude restrictions. And AutoTune will configure all of your approaches, whether it's an ILS or RNAV approach. On today's flight, we'll be flying from Prague to Vienna, and I have purposefully selected this winding RNAV approach that's avoiding the populated area so that we can see how our autopilot will handle this approach. Okay, first of all, let me show you my favorite new feature, which is the ambient lighting modifier that we created for more realistic lighting and reflections. So I'm going to open the EFB and let's go into the settings tab. And here we can now change this setting from default to natural, and it fixes the dark cockpit issue in X-Plane 12. Note that in X-Plane 12.2.0, Laminar Research has improved the cockpit lighting, so you can always keep this setting at the default if that's what you prefer. Alright, so I'm gonna go and program the FMS very quickly. So let's have a look at the FMS. Let's bring up the map. So I'm gonna click on the MFD, gonna move it around. You can scroll to resize the pop-up panels. And I'm gonna go to the plan page. And now we can start. So we'll click on ident, then we'll go to the route page. We'll enter our destination. We'll activate that. Departure, runway 12. SID, VOS 5G, apply. Then we've got an airway, so there will be M725, and exit waypoint is Lennox. Then activate, that's the end of our route, so arrival, runway 16, RNAV, and approach transition. And our star is Lanu 7 Whiskey. All right, if I go over, hover above the waypoint center and above the range indicator, that's where we have our click spot, so we can scroll through the flight plan or zoom in and out, and we can see that we have a discontinuity. So I'm going to apply this, activate, and I'm going to go to the flight plan. I'm going to find discontinuity, and I'm going to delete it. So delete, activate, there we go. Now we can go to perf init and enter the performance data. So we'll go next. Now we'll go to our EFB to get the weight and balance data. So we'll click on weight and balance, we'll enter our payload, which will be 1500 kilos. Fuel will be 5000 kilos. We'll request manual load sheet. And now here we have our takeoff CG, and we have the zero fuel weight, which is what we need to enter into the FMS. So I'm going to bring it up, move it around, and I'm going to enter 16.6 as takeoff CG, 33073 as zero fuel weight. And now if I bring up the MFD, we can see that the VSD is now empty. As soon as I enter the cruise altitude, which is 20,000 feet, it is going to calculate and populate the vertical situation display, and we can see that it's all right there. If you are ever doing just a quick flight, you are not submitting a flight to SimBrief, you're not sure what your cruise altitude should be, you can always just enter an altitude there. Let's try 280. You can see the top of the sun is way above and it just doesn't fit, so I'm going to go lower. So let's try 250. This is a very short cruise, so still let's go lower. Let's go back to 20,000 feet, and you can see that you have a nice cruise segment there. And we have a few altitude restrictions. We need to cross Lennox at 15,000 feet. However, we don't have to worry about that because VNAV will do that for us automatically. I'm going to close this. Let's go next. I'm going to keep all of this at default. Same here. Next, flaps 2. And now I need to calculate the V speeds. So if we go back to our EFB, let's go to the takeoff performance. Actually, if we load the plane, we'll have the takeoff weight pre-populated. So runway 12, wind, which I'm getting from Navigraph charts, temperature and QNH. Takeoff thrust is TO2 and flaps 2. Compute. Now we can go to the data link, we can send this to the FMS, and we can load the takeoff V speeds. And now if I go to perf init, actually no, perf takeoff, we can see that all the speeds are populated here. All right, so we can finish this by going to the partial limit. We can leave this at default and flight plan, and that's it. That is the FMS programmed. Now I'm going to do the after start checklist. So before start, engine start, after start. So we have ground equipment removed, slat flap set. So that will be flaps 2. And flight controls. So let's check those. Let's go to the MFD systems and flight control page. There we go. Let's check the flight controls. All right, perfect. Everything's working fine. So we're gonna go to the map page. I'm gonna zoom in. Okay, I'm gonna close this. That is the after start checklist complete. By the way, if you notice these red indicators on the ICAS, that is because we're flying the lineage, and those are the extra tanks that are in the fuselage, but we don't need all that extra fuel today. We're not flying to New York, we're flying to Vienna, so we can keep them empty. Next, let's turn the auto brakes to RTO. We have the new auto brake system, which works exactly like on the real E-jets. And then we can configure the autopilot. So let's start with the altitude. We can use the knob on the glare shield panel, but I actually prefer using the click spots on the pop-up panels. And next we'll do FMS speed on. And now the only two things you need to do is press the toga button, which configures the autopilot for takeoff, and then press the auto throttle button, which will arm the auto throttle. You don't need to press anything else. You don't need to press flight director. I often see people on YouTube pressing other buttons right now, but you only really need to press these two buttons and you're ready for takeoff. All right, so we can start taxiing. And this is going to be a very short taxi. I'm going to actually speed this up so that I don't waste any of your time. But before we take off, I would like to show you our next new feature, which is the realistic LED strobe and beacon lights. So if we go to the exterior, let's change the time of day to night so that we can actually see the lights properly. Okay, perfect. And now we can go back into the cockpit and turn the strobe lights on. And now you can see these long flashes that are front and back strobe lights followed by a beacon light, which is how some new Embraers have it when they have the LED lights installed. Now we can also go and change this. We go to the settings and change the LED strobe and beacon lights off. And now you can see that the strobe light flashes much quicker, and it flashes front, then back, then front, then back. And the beacon light is independent from this. This is how it will be on all the E-jets without the LED option. And for the E175, if you enable the extended winglets, you'll also now have the iconic long flashes where the strobe and beacon lights flash at the same time for much longer. This is something that the community has been asking for forever, and it took us forever to implement, but I'm very happy that we now have this. All right, but let's get back to our lineage. So let's go into the cockpit. We can turn on the landing lights. We can also change the time back to day. And now I'd love to show you another very cool thing, which is the auto stow feature. So as you know, always for takeoff, landing, and turbulence, you always need to close all the doors, all the tables, you need to open the blinds, and we have now implemented this into the lineage. So all the cabin parts that you can move, like the cabin doors, all the tray tables, all the blinds, or even the lights. As soon as I turn the seatbelt sign on, which is right here, all of these things will automatically transition to the correct position for takeoff, landing, or turbulence. This, of course, works with the seatbelt sign switch in the cockpit. I just added it all around the cabin as well so that you can see it in action. All right, so we've got the strobe lights on, the landing lights on, seatbelts light switch is on, and the sterile, let's turn that on. And now we are ready for takeoff. Let me just pop up these screens here so that we can see everything properly. All right, perfect. Now let's do the takeoff config check.
No takeoff. Brake.
Okay, let's release the brakes.
Takeoff. Okay.
Thank you very much, lady. And we can go and take off. And as soon as I line up with the runway, the only thing I need to do is push the throttles forward. That will automatically engage the auto throttle and the whole takeoff sequence. And we have auto throttle engaged in the takeoff mode. It just transitioned to the hold mode, so it's going to hold the thrust. Rotate. Right, positive rate, you're up. I'm gonna engage the autopilot. And now LNAV has automatically engaged at 400 feet. We are turning right to avoid Prague. Again, we're avoiding Prague and Vienna. And now flight level change has just engaged as well at 1200 feet. So that is VNAV that just kicked in. We can also see that the FMS speed is changing the speeds for us. So we're currently flying at 210 knots. I'm going to change the flaps to flaps 1. However, we're still flying at 210 because that is the departure limit for the airport, which is the default value in the FMS, which you can change as well. As soon as we pass 3,000 feet above the ground, the departure limit is going to go away, so that just happened now. So you can see the speed change to 225 knots, which is the speed limit for flaps 1. And now we just need to let the airplane do its thing, pretty much. I'm just gonna change the flaps to flaps clean. And once the flaps are fully stowed, you'll see that the speed will change to 250 knots. There we go. So the airplane is going to push down slightly to catch up. At 6,000 feet, I'm going to press standard. Now we're in Europe, we can press it at 6,000 feet, that's fine. In the US, it will be 18,000. All right, I'm gonna close this. Now let me show you another major new feature that I really love. So if we go to the settings page and on the sound tab, you can see the noise cancelling headset. So let's go ahead and turn it on. I love that every time. So the noise cancelling doesn't just mute sounds. It selectively removes specific frequencies from the sounds while keeping some sounds in, like the radio for example. Because real pilots will always wear noise cancelling headsets when they're in the cockpit. So this feature brings us another step closer to really feeling like you're a real airline pilot. Okay, our after takeoff checklist is complete. As we're approaching 10,000 feet, we can turn off the landing lights. And let's have a look outside for a second. We're now climbing through the clouds. Look at that, beautiful. So now is the time for the tour of the cabin. Alright, so let's do this. I keep flying with the doors open, but that's alright because the jet is all ours. So first of all, here in the galley section, we have the cabin lighting control panel, which we can pop up. And here you can control all the lighting. You can also control the blinds, but we're gonna come back to this a little later. So let's close this. Now the cabin is divided into several zones. This is the dining zone. Now we're entering the main lounge. Let's click on the seatbelt sign switch, the hidden switch, and you can see all those movable parts are turning back to where they were previously. Now, of course, you can control all of them manually. So you can just click on the tray table, for example. You can also control the blinds. You can click above them to close them, or you can use the switches below each blind. And now let's have a look at the TV. Here, your billionaire passengers will see some flight info, and you can also have a pretty purchase slideshow, which you can customize. And another great thing is that if you have Avitab web installed, you can turn Avitab on and then go to the browser, and you can literally browse the internet. So we can go and check out the X-Craft's website, for example. There we go. So you can go on YouTube, you can go on Netflix, you can do whatever you want. Let me just quickly check how we're doing. All right, so we are cruising at 20,000 feet and we are already approaching our top of descent, but we still have some time. So let's go back into the cabin because there's still many things I didn't show you. So I was actually super fortunate to be able to visit a real lineage here in London, which was absolutely amazing. And it allowed me to take hundreds of photos, and I was then able to really recreate the details of the lineage. So you can see that all the textures are super detailed. Now this carpet is very cool because it has this very special shape on it, and I thought, okay, how could I recreate this? And it kind of looked like a stock price. So I went and I found the Embraer stock and I used the curve to create this shape on the carpet. You can actually see here under the table it says Embraer 3 stock, and we can even see some years which indicate where the curve was, where the stock price was, 2010. Now if we go here in zone 4, by the way, this table stows in a really funky way. I don't know if you're supposed to put your feet on it, but that's how it is. And here we enter the bedroom. Here will be COVID. And now if we come to 2025, the X-Craft's lineage was going to be released, so the stock price shot up. But now that we're here, we can also have a look at the mirror. And again, we have the TV where we can go to Avitab. You can open the map or the browser. We can also close the door or the blinds to get some privacy. All nice and cozy. And let's now go to the exterior and explore all the ways in which you can configure the aircraft. So another cool thing is in version 2.0, we now have the settings page on the EFB where you can have several different things that you can change. So for example, we can turn on and off the SATCOM, which is available only on the Lineage. But you can also notice that if you turn it off or on, you'll then lose the signal actually, which is very cool. Then we have the plugged windows. So actually let me turn around a little bit. As you can see, the Lineage has some windows missing on the side because you only have those zones, but some Lineage aircraft in the world have all the windows and they're plugged from the inside. So that's why we have this setting so that you can change it based on which livery you might be flying. Right, let's go and turn it back on. Next, we also have the wheel covers. So if we look from underneath, you can see that the wheels now have the covers on. We can also turn them off. Plus, in this version, we also have the sound page where you can change all these sounds exactly to your liking, and it will be saved for the next time when you open X-Plane. Another great thing is that every livery included in the Lineage package will have a different interior. Plus, I created the paint kit for the cabins so that community painters can create their own cabins. I've seen many people already customize the Lineage, and it's really cool. But let's have a look at what the cabin looks like at night. So let's change the time to night. All right, here we go. So first let me open this table again, and let's move to the side so that we have a better view. And you can see that the night lighting has so many different elements to it, and you can control all of them. You can see that even the TVs are glowing based on what's on the screen. So if we change it, the glow is now blue. So we can also use the control panel that we looked at initially. That's in the galley. If we bring it up, we can move it to the side. You can now use this panel to control all of the lights individually. You can dim them, you can turn them on, off. You can change the floor. You can even turn off the lights in the galley. You can change the upwash and downwash. So you really have complete control of the cabin lighting. We can even turn on and off the spotlights, which are all here above all the seats. You can also click on it to turn it on and off. You can scroll to dim it, and you can even grab it and point it in any direction. All of these lights can be positioned individually, they can be controlled individually or all together. You can also use these buttons to control all the blinds at the same time. And if we come closer to the seats, every seat has an individual little display that allows you to control the light above it. You can also see that we have some super detailed textures. I'm actually using something called decals, which is something newly introduced in X-Plane 12, and not many aircraft have this. And it allows me to add some very fine details without compromising your frame rate. And before we go back into the cockpit, I just want to show you the lighting in the bedroom. So here again, you can control these little spotlights. You can also grab them, you can point them in any direction. You can also control this bigger light behind the bed. Again, the spotlight can be controlled, moved around, turned on and off. So you really have a full control of all the lighting. So let's change the time back to day, and let's go back into the cockpit. All right, and we're just 1 minute away from top of descent. So if we look at the FMS, we have that flashing message on the PFD. That means that there is a message on the FMS, reset altitude. It is warning us that we still didn't lower the altitude setting, which would mean that the airplane wouldn't start descending on its own at top of descent. So let's go ahead and lower it. And now you can see that the little magenta diamond is slowly coming down to the center of the scale. And as we approach the center, the altitude mode will change to the path mode, which just now happened. So the airplane is now starting to descend automatically, completely on its own. And we are going to descend to meet the LANX altitude restriction at 15,000 feet. The speed is now 280, which is our descent speed defined in the FMS. If we have a look at the progress section of the MFD, we can see that we're 80 miles away from the airport, so we can close these pop-ups. Let's have a look at our checklists. So we have the descent checklist, auto brake, selector, and landing data. Let's do the landing performance data. So we are landing at Vienna. Now for the weather, let me pull up Navigraph charts. So I'm looking up the weather. Okay, so the wind will be 280/14. Temperature 10 degrees. and QNH will be 1012. Landing weight, which we need to calculate. In our next versions, the FMS will calculate this for you, but for now we still need to calculate ourselves. So we will simply take the difference between the destination and the next waypoint fuel, and we will subtract that from the gross weight. So the difference between those two is 200 kilos. So we are gonna then go to the systems page, go to the status page, and now here we can see the gross weight. So 37,250 minus 200, let's make it 37,000 kilos. Flaps 5s, all operating, no icing. Let's hit compute. Let's close the MFD. All right, so we can now send this data to the FMS. So let's hit send to FMS. Let's look at the FMS, go to the data link. Load landing V speeds, loaded. If you go to the landing performance, you can see that all the V speeds for landing are there. Let's go back to the flight plan page. All right, and now the aircraft is descending nicely without any of our input, so we can speed things up a little bit. We're gonna set the auto brakes to high so that we can see the new auto brake system in action. And we now also have a fully custom fuel system on the E-Jets, but the Lineage features a more complex fuel system that we are simulating based on a real aircraft. It includes 2 additional tanks in the fuselage that feed fuel into the wing tanks, operating automatically but only during a cruise and under specific conditions. Additionally, the Lineage is equipped with more powerful engines, providing the airplane with enhanced performance for up to a 9-hour flight time. So you can use the Lineage to cross oceans, fly from London to New York or London to Dubai, and this is comparable to the performance of the Airbus A321 XLR. And we can now see that our descent speed is decreasing so that we hit 250 knots exactly at 10,000 feet. And through the clouds we can already see Danube, which is the second biggest river in Europe, and it flows through Vienna. This is the river, and Vienna is right in front of us, and we're gonna do a left turn to fly around the city. Alright, and we passed 10,000 feet, so I'm going to turn the landing lights on, seatbelt signs on. I'm gonna close the door finally. Alright, perfect. Now, as soon as we reach 30 miles out of the airport, we're gonna get a prompt of activate approach speeds. And there we go. We can now also see the term flasher. It means we're in the terminal area, and the RNP changed to 1. Now, we don't need to activate approach speeds just yet. We want to fly for a little faster, for a little longer, and we will activate them at around 25 miles out. Okay, let's now press the activate approach speeds, and we'll see that the speed changes to 210. As I said, today we're flying an RNAV approach. Now, most of you are probably familiar with an ILS approach. However, in order to have an ILS approach, the airport has to install very specific infrastructure at the airport, which is expensive. So not all runways in the world have ILS approaches. An RNAV approach uses GPS and onboard systems to guide the airplane to the runway instead of the ground-based signals like an ILS, but it still allows you to fly precise approaches with lateral and vertical guidance. The great thing is that on the E-Jets, the procedure to set up the approach is extremely simple and exactly the same as for an ILS approach. All we need to do is simply press the approach button, and our automagic systems will configure everything for you. So let's go ahead and press the approach button. Okay, and now we can see that we have LNAV, VNAV on top that tells us what kind of RNAV approach this is. And we also see the glide path being armed. Glide path is like glide slope, but for RNAV approaches. We also see this white armed diamond on top of the scale here, which is exactly as it would be on an ILS approach. It would just be blue. And as you can see, the glide path is currently above us. Also, let's not forget to change the barometric pressure to the current setting based on the weather outside. The lighting outside changed because X-Plane decided to change the lighting, so that's not on us. Okay, now we can see that we are turning to the left away from the city. The runway is actually right there. We're currently 20 miles out, flying at 210 knots. That's all good. So now once this white diamond gets closer to the center, the glide path will automatically engage and we'll go from the path to the glide path mode. And once the glide path is captured, we're going to be descending down towards our runway. And that's all going to happen automatically. So all we really need to worry about right now is retracting the flaps. So at 13 miles out, we're gonna set flaps 1. And that will change the speed to 180 knots. And here we have this LNAV, VNAV indication. You could also see LPV for a different kind of RNAV approach. And for ILS approaches, you would see approach 1 or approach 2 based on if your minimums are set to the radio altitude or the barometric minimums. And we can see that we just captured glide path. So that's perfect. Now we're gliding down towards the runway, and LNAV, VNAV is going to change to an active mode once we are fully configured for the approach. So we can already see our runway in distance. It's right there. As you can see, we're still turning away from it. We're not aligned with it. We're going to align in the last moment. All right, we're 13 miles out, so I'm going to set flaps 1. This is going to change the speed to 180 knots automatically. And I keep mentioning all these automatic things. Of course, you can always switch to the manual modes. You can turn FMS speed off, and then you can just control the speeds manually. The same way, you can also turn glide path off, and you can use FPA or vertical speed, which are the manual modes for vertical navigation. And we can now see the approach flasher, which is telling us that we are 2 miles out of the final approach point, which in our case would be the waypoint Whiskey 006 that's right in front of us. Okay, we are 10 miles out. Normally we would do flaps 2, but I'm gonna go to flaps 3 because I want to get configured a little bit sooner for this approach. Gear down. You can see the speed now went down to 150. We're now starting to turn towards the runway. Okay, we're flaps 3. Gear down. 3 green here on the ICAS. Let me zoom in a little bit on the map. So it's always very important to set the correct barometric pressure based on the weather outside, but it is especially crucial for an LNAV VNAV approach because the vertical guidance provided by the glide path mode is based on the barometric altitude. So if your altitude setting is off, the guidance will be off as well. Let me demonstrate that. If we change the setting here, you can see that the diamond will start moving up and down. So always make sure that you have the correct setting. Okay, we are 7 miles out. As soon as we get to 5 miles out, I'm going to set flaps 5. And at that point, we'll be fully configured for the final approach. So the LNAV VNAV indication will jump to the right side and flash. And at this point, I would also like to go and turn the noise cancelling off because I like to hear the engines when I'm landing. Just to remind you that the noise cancelling was on. It's quite a difference. We're also going to set our minimums. So let me check the chart. This is going to be actually barometric minimums, and it's going to be 1200 feet. There we go. Okay, 5 miles out, I'm going to go and set flaps 5. And we can see that our approach is fully configured and active.
1,000.
Alright, and here we go, it's showtime. I don't know about you guys, but for me, it's really important that I watch every landing for every live stream that I watch on YouTube, or even in real life. Like, once I was traveling with my wife and we were passing by an airport and there was an airplane landing, and I told her, like, look, there's an airplane landing, and she said, cool,
minimum.
and she looked away, and I could not believe that. How crazy. Anyway, let's focus on flying the airplane. We are reaching our minimums.
Minimums.
Autopilot.
Let's disconnect the autopilot.
$500. $200. $100.
The auto throttle will disconnect automatically.
50,
All I have to do is
Throttle.
pull the throttle
30.
back.
Throttle.
20. 10.
There we go. And we can see our auto brake system in action. It's really powerful. I'm not even having to use the reverse
Auto brake.
throttles right now, and we can actually exit right here. And when you apply manual brakes, you can hear the auto brake warning, and that turns the auto brake system back to off. All right, here we are in Vienna once again. But anyway, guys, I hope that you enjoyed this video. The E-Jets 2.0 are out. They are amazing. They're really, really fun, and I definitely recommend that you go and give them a try. You're not going to regret it. You're going to have a lot of great time.